All right, we'll give it just a minute here, and I think we are live. Hey, everybody. Look who I got
Hello.
with me back.
Yeah,
It's
been a while.
Jason. Yes, it has been a while. I'm so glad you're back.
Yeah.
And um, we decided on this topic a little while ago. And yeah, so we're going to do accessing our higher self. And I think it's going to be really interesting. So um, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So let's see who is here. Say hello to a few people. Jason. Jason's here.
I'm here.
Jackie is here. Hey, Jackie. Hey, Miss Moonlight is here. Harley's here. And thank you all for being on both of our channels. Appreciate you hopping back and forth there, Jackie and Harley. Let's see. Marilla is here. Hello there. And Jeff is here. Hey, Jeff. And Jessica and Karen. All right, I'm still scrolling. Samantha is here. Carla is here. Great topic. Yep. Barbara is here. And if you are on my channel, please make sure that you go down below, and Jason's channel is there. And you can go to his channel and subscribe. So that would be awesome if you could do that for me. And vice versa, if you're on Jason's channel, you want to subscribe to me, I would love to have you as a subscriber. It's free. So there we go with that. And thank you all for being here. So, Jason, I came up with this topic and I thought it would be perfect for you because that's what you do as you are accessing our higher selves, with the practice that you do. I thought maybe it would be good to, for some who don't know what you do, maybe to tell us about what you do and how that relates to the higher self. So,
Sure. Well, I mean, I think it's a great topic. Once you start getting or diving in doing like the work that I do, it's like, I don't know, you get used to certain topics. So then you think, oh, everybody knows about it. I think
right.
it's kind of the nature of when you are, I guess, specializing in something. So, yeah, I think it's great to do. So, I am Jason Tempinski, and I am um, one of the things I do is a QHHT practitioner. If you are not aware of what that is, it's a quantum healing hypnosis technique. It was developed by Dolores Cannon, um, who I won't go into a long history about her, but she kind of fell into hypnosis, and she started doing hypnosis with her husband way back when, and he actually was the one that was interested in it, and they were actually wanting to learn how to do hypnosis to lose weight and stop smoking. Um, and then he worked in the military, I believe, and some woman in the military wanted to come see him to lose some weight, and the very first person or the very first session that they had, something strange happened, and her husband and both her and her were a little confused about what was going on, and they finally realized that she was actually going back into past lifetimes, and so that's kind of where it all started. So her book, Five Lives Remembered, is actually her first book that talks about that. So if you're interested in past life regression and someone who really wasn't setting out to do it, I kind of connect with that a little bit. I kind of fell into what I do. So essentially, it's past life regression, but it's I know that there's regressionists who and then take a different approach where you kind of take field trips and things like that to other lifetimes. This one, the QHHT, takes you to the deepest level of trance. It's called the theta state, which is about right before you fall asleep, right before you wake up. It's kind of that limbo land. Some of you might, kind of jerk in bed at night when you're there. I know I do. That's a good sign that you're in the theta state. And that's where we can access past life memories, we can access our higher self, we can access pretty much anything that we want to. It's just a matter of getting there and being held there, and still falling asleep. um, so that's what QHHT does. It's deep relaxation, gets you to that relaxed state. Um, Although it's really, at least from my experience in being a practitioner, it's not so much about past lives anymore. It's really transferred into um, parallel lifetimes. So that's something that's kind of coming to the forefront for us now, and it's just because we're becoming more awake, and all the energies that are going on right now and have been going on for a while. Um, it's all about us becoming more aware of ourselves as more kind of infinite universal beings. So what people are shown during QHHT is really changing into something that it's more helping us remember who we are, that we are powerful beings, that we have had many lifetimes, that we've had many lifetimes in other planets and dimensions and everything else. So it's really transformed into something that's not just about past life regression. Um, a big part of it also is healing. The healings that Dolores witnessed are incredible. I've been doing this for, I think, about 4 or 5 years now. Um, I'm kind of the practical skeptic, where like I have to experience something firsthand to fully believe it's it's true. And I've witnessed some pretty incredible healings in the sessions that are bones cracking and popping and being readjusted, and it's just amazing.
Can you give us another example of that? Like, yeah, the
Yeah,
healing. I'm really interested in that.
yeah. The healings. I should preface it by saying that kind of the spiritual understanding of why we experience physical symptoms in our bodies are purely messages. The higher selves, higher self, plural, um, recognize that we do have to deal with toxins around us, whether it be in the environment, toxins that we take into our bodies through what we eat. So those can affect our body, physical well-being. But according to them, we should ideally be 100% healthy all the time.
Mhm.
And so our body is kind of this mechanism through which they can communicate with us to let us know what's going on, how we should, what are we doing that we should better align ourselves with our life path, our lesson. Um, yeah, YouTube does carry a lot of Dolores. And uh, by knowing essentially what the cause of, or what that message is in our bodies, that's where the actual healing begins, because we get the message and we know what we need to do to continue on our path a little bit better. So I'm not a doctor, just the disclaimer. The medical field treats the body as more in the present day. The spiritual perspective is that there's a lot of things going on that we might fix it medically, but that message could actually show up somewhere else in our bodies in a different way. So the healings, that was a long answer to
It's okay. It's awesome.
I actually, one of the I had a client who had scoliosis since birth, and the short version is that her past lifetime, she had a life that was, she had made a lot of decisions. She was a very powerful woman, and she was met with a lot of conflict. She was actually killed because she was effective in what she was doing, but people, particularly in those times and this lifetime that she was experiencing, men weren't appreciative of it. She was killed for it. In this life, she came in with the scoliosis, and it's because essentially anything to do with our back and kind of our spine has to do with our external support system, also our internal support system, how well we support ourselves. So the body is really symbolic in terms of spine supports us physically, but it's also, if we have issues with our spine, one of the most common things is about having support, but it's also our decision-making processes. So after that lifetime, she was so traumatized by being killed about making decisions and making calls and doing things effectively. She second guessed herself. And so she came into this life with scoliosis as a way of, this lifetime, she's really struggled with making firm decisions. She waits for other people to make decisions for her and everything else. So in the hypnosis, when we got to the portion where I start communicating with her higher self and why did you show her this lifetime and why she's experiencing this in her back, that was the explanation. It was a matter of her, one, knowing all this history and why she had been born with it, and two, how to overcome it, which was one of her challenges in this life, is she needs to get over her fear of making decisions and standing her ground. Granted, there is, sometimes it's not always instantaneous for people. Sometimes the higher self said, well, this is kind of their life path and what they need to learn, so we can't really interfere. She needs to do this on her own. They also sometimes work really well with bargaining. I call them they, referring to the higher self, because it's everything is one on the other side pretty much. But with her, I said, in order for her to be able to continue and making these decisions and moving forward, she kind of needs some help in terms of her back. So they agreed, and her back, I heard the cracking in her back.
Wow.
And I'll admit it was incredible, but at the same time, it was surprising and not scary, but it was just like
startling, probably.
Like, I can't believe this is actually happening right now.
Right.
It was incredible, and her back was completely realigned. So that was probably one of the most powerful. And it's actually, Dolores actually had a client who went through the same thing, so to witnessing the very same thing, because she came in with a cane, she left without it, and it was
wow.
It was incredible. Another one that really stands out to me, and it wasn't as powerful and deep, but it was a woman that she had high thyroid issues all of her life, and it caused her to gain weight because of the medications and everything else. And she really wanted to know why do I experience this, and how can I overcome it, because I want to lose weight. I didn't, and it ended up that it's about, which this is actually one of the most common things with the thyroid, is not speaking your truth, not speaking up, not being authentic, or feeling like you can be authentic with people because you're afraid to be yourself. And again, this was about, it was a past lifetime, but she needed to work on it in this lifetime as well. And so I kind of had to bargain, because I was like, part of it was that she needed to get out and be social, but she was really self-conscious about being so overweight. And so I said, is there any way you can help with her thyroid, just so that she can stop medications and begin to lose weight and feel more self-confident physically? And they agreed. And then there was kind of this, it wasn't bright, and it took me a while to see it, but there was kind of this warm glow, golden light that was going on in her chest, that was kind of coming out of her chest. And I asked them, the higher self, I said, am I seeing this? And what are you doing? And they said, we're healing her chest, or healing the thyroid with light. And which is actually, light is what they actually, as far as I know, the only thing that they use light to heal whenever they're working with the physical body. So it's pretty incredible.
That is really incredible. So I want to take this a little bit to a different direction, if you don't mind. And
Absolutely.
For us who cannot get to the hypnosis, right, and we want to access our higher self, how would you suggest that we do this? What are some ways that we can do this to access, because I know I want to access my higher self. How would I do that if I couldn't do the hypnosis?
I think the misconception, and I think we're human and we all struggle and we question and our ego takes control, and we all pretty much do really access our higher self all the time. It's just we don't really perceive it that way. And one of the easiest ways to have the sense that there are deeper ways to connect. So, we can talk about that, but it's just also acknowledging the connection. So intuition is 100% the easiest thing for everyone to connect with and understand of, I shouldn't go there, I shouldn't do this, but I do, you shouldn't do something, you do it anyway, and then it comes back to you, and then you're like, I knew I shouldn't have done it because there was that voice in my head that told me not to do it, but I didn't listen. That voice, that, you could call it your conscience, sort of, but it's just that gut instinct, and that's our spirit team. It's like, oh, no, don't do that. But we still have a choice. We have free will in the human form, so it's really a matter of trusting your intuition. And also, gratitude works wonders with higher selves and also our spirit teams, because the more gratitude we have for those little pings of intuition, that builds the connection more deeply with them in certain ways. Other ways of accessing higher self, meditation. I know not everybody likes to meditate, and that's come through very clearly with some of my sessions, and just meeting with people that have a hard time slowing down their mental processes and are always thinking of the next thing they need to do, and it's really difficult, and it's just the nature of the way that we're kind of conditioned in the earth experience. I've asked and said, what are other ways that people can really connect with higher self, spirit team, if they find the meditation really challenging? And the biggest, easiest way is anything that just takes you into the space where time just doesn't exist, where you can get involved like in something that's creative. If you're an artist, painting, drawing, if you're a writer, writing, musician, listening to music, walking in nature, without a cell phone and headphones, being in the space where it's just you and you're not distracted, where it's, the phone could ring or someone comes and knocks at your door and you don't hear it. It's that space that they encourage us to really utilize that as a way of opening yourself up and practicing a connection. Yeah, something where you can zone out. I do drawing and artwork, and it's like 3 hours go by, and it's like, oh my God, what happened? So when you're in that space and that mindset, that's when they really, kind of start establishing that connection. Is just ask questions in your mind as you're doing those things, like, what should I, staying in a space of your spiritual progression and betterment, not like, when should I go grocery shopping? That's taking you out of it. But really listening and tapping in, because we're in a different frame of mind, and in a sense, we're kind of in a hypnosis, because when we do those things, we're not fully aware. Our attention's very focused, and even though we see that as hypnosis, it really is. So, in a sense, it's kind of like QHHT on your own, but it's a little different pathway. But you're really in that same state of mind in order to really start the conversation. But it also requires trusting what you're hearing and not thinking, oh, I'm making this up, or this isn't working. Why isn't it? Because then you're taking yourself out of that space. So it's a really kind of a delicate balance, I guess.
I always say in my lives that, like, your gut feeling, your intuition, your higher self is that first feeling that you usually get, and if it's right or not, and then you might start questioning yourself after that. But it's good just to stay with the main thing that you're, initially feeling, and
Yeah.
that's your gut, right? So,
And it takes time to trust it because we've been taught to not trust it. At least, I think the traditional, women are more intuitive thing, but then when it comes to males, it's, at least for me, it hasn't been so difficult because it's something I've always had and dealt with and accepted, and so I haven't really questioned it. But
right.
there aren't a lot of men, at least that I have heard of, that really talk about, I trusted my intuition on the, well, maybe gut feeling. I guess it's the verbiage.
Right.
But yeah, and it's also understanding kind of, and this is something I talk about a lot too, because we talk about ego a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that part of ourselves that questions all the time and makes us, you're making this up. This isn't working. You should really be doing something else like grocery shopping right now. Why are you trying to talk to someone who's invisible? That kind of downer voice in our heads, that's the ego. Even though we kind of give it a bad rap, they do have, and they are self-aware, which is really strange.
Really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because that never crossed my mind until I had a session, and there's been a couple other practitioners that had the same experience, because when people really struggle in hypnosis, like struggling that negative self-talk, like, why isn't this working? This isn't, what am I seeing? I'm making this up. If a practitioner or I get the sense that someone is getting wrapped up in that kind of snowball of not coming back or not being able to go into hypnosis, it is possible just to say, we just asking, Scott's ego to kind of step aside right now and give him the space in order to have this experience. At one occasion, I had a client, when I said that, they said, "Oh, thank you for acknowledging us." And it was really, I was taken by surprise by it. And I said, who is this?
Who am I talking to?
And they said, "We're the ego." And I said,
Wow.
"I didn't know that you were kind of separate, like a guide in a way." And they said, "Yes." And they said, we do get, and they did say, we get a bad rap a lot, but we do have qualities about us. We do have a purpose. And so the questioning went into, why do you do what we do, or what you do? And they said, well, part of our function for us on the earth plane is to protect. We protect you from what we believe to feel like shouldn't be things that you shouldn't be doing, or staying with the same routine, making us feel comfortable in not moving forward,
Being safe, right?
being safe. And I mean, in the bigger scheme of things, it kind of makes sense. It's like they're kind of the barrier to protect us from, I don't know, doing things that are too crazy. But then sometimes we fall into listening to them too much, which they recognize that part of their purpose is that we need to learn to, one, know that they're not us, like not ourselves. They're a separate part of our earth experience, almost like guides, but they're there to challenge us all the time. And we can nicely ask them to be like, or I'm doing something spiritual today. I'm going to have a hypnosis. I'm going to meditate for a while. Could you sit to the side and watch? And they will listen. According to them, I've tried it. It does work. And I think it's more just because I'm aware, because I'm kind of plagued with my ego a lot, or I was in the past. But once I start in that, this isn't going to work. This is not going to happen. Why, I did something wrong. Even when I'm doing spiritual stuff, it's like, why isn't this coming to me? Or what did I do wrong? Are they mad at me? Every time I hear that and start going down that route, I just am like, okay, that's not me. That's my ego, and put it to the side. So
Right. Wow.
since a lot of people who are very rational, very logical, who come into hypnosis sessions, one of the most effective ways for people to kind of be able to, I guess, compartmentalize everything is just visualize yourself, your higher self sitting in a chair. You're sitting in one chair, your ego is sitting in another chair, and just visualizing yourself talking to your ego, saying, "This is my higher self. I'm going to be working with my higher self today. Could you just sit and watch? You don't have to leave. It does need to be respectful with them," they said, because they are doing their job, I guess.
Right.
So
That's interesting. Yeah. I've always wondered how to do that, how to keep your ego separate than your authentic self.
yeah,
And it seems really difficult. So, unless you break it down. So, I like the way that you're breaking it down.
yeah, because and the funny thing is we talk about the higher self and spirit teams a lot, but then talking about the ego as kind of not, it's separate. I mean, it's still part of us, but just the fact knowing that that isn't me, that's tumbling down the hill in distress, that's I'm being challenged to overcome
Mhm.
that voice and be like, you know what, I'm not going to listen to the ego today. I'm going to do this,
Right.
because it feels right.
Awesome. We had a question here, I think, from Harley. She said, Jason, do you feel or have you noticed if it takes longer for females to calm the mind down versus the men? This may be because of evolution, where women were nurturers and had to keep their mind on the family.
That's kind of a tough question, only because the weird thing about a particular QHHT is it's almost like the less people know about what they're doing and what they're getting into, the easier it is for them to have the experience.
Oh, wow.
Which seems counterintuitive. But I will say that the first hypnosis that I did, was a friend of mine, and uh, he wasn't really interested in it. But I was like, I've done the training. I actually wanted to do it with my mom first, but she was too busy, which actually was a good thing because it took me 9 times with her to get her to go under,
Oh, wow.
because she's a healer. She works, she does massage and everything else, and I thought this is going to be so easy with her. um but it wasn't. But my friend, he really had nothing. It was like, okay, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. He didn't care about past lives. He didn't know about past lives or really want to know about them. He does have kind of the uh I mean, he's Catholic, but it's not outwardly, so there is some kind of fear of things that are like doing this type of work. But he was like, okay, whatever. And he went out like within the first probably 2 minutes. And
Wow.
we just started just the beginning is just relaxation and visualization. And he was out and we went to a lifetime, and it was so detailed. Incredibly detailed. Like, he was a blacksmith and he stole a ring from a preacher because the yellow fever was breaking out, and he stole the ring so that he and his family could get away. I mean, it was these details that were just like, there's no way he could be making it up. And then I spoke with his higher self, and then I brought him out of the hypnosis, and I asked, how long do you think you're out? And he was like, I just closed my eyes. And it was the most incredible thing. But then I've had so male, very rational, logical, and he was out like a light. I've had people that are very, like women who are very well versed in Dolores Cannon, have read all of her books, meditate daily, go to retreats, the full gamut, and they just are not able to relax. And I think part of it is that we have the sense that this is going to be so easy for me, and I know what's going to happen. And setting up those expectations and the belief system, like, I'm really spiritual and I do everything, and I'm really in touch with everything. I'm just going to be able to do this. And it's a weird mix because it shouldn't be work, but at the same time, having no expectations is also really important. So to answer the question, there's a lot of factors that come into play. Granted, the relaxation is, I mean, more of the men that I meet with are more rational, logical, but there are some that they used to be math teachers, but they still go out like a light and have really incredible sessions. So there's a lot of factors at play.
Is it usually one lifetime that comes through during one session? That's a good question.
That's a great question. Sometimes it's one. It depends on what someone needs to know, and sometimes it might be several lifetimes in order to drive like a particular point home with someone. If the higher selves, like if it's someone, I don't know. It's more when people don't have faith in themselves and they don't believe that they have the ability to do something. So, I wish I could be more outspoken and a leader. And so they might be taken through and they jump by themselves. Bowlers call it frog leaping, where they'll be in one lifetime, they'll be experiencing some things, and then all of a sudden, the next part where, let's move forward to another day in this lifetime, they'll be completely different place, completely different time, completely different person. And at first it's a little confusing. But then we get to the point in the session where we bring forth the higher self, and it's like, why did you show them all the lifetimes? And most of the time it's about all these were lifetimes that she was really strong. She was really grounded. She has that in her. It's just something happened, whether it be in another lifetime or this lifetime, that's holding her back, and she's afraid to step back into that. So it can be one, it can be multiple. I've had some where people are going through all these dimensions, which is that's a whole other topic. It's really based in you are shown what you need to see during a session or during a hypnosis in order to help you in the best way. So really the deciding factor is your higher self 100% in order to have you get the message in the way that you will understand and listen.
Got a great question here. I think, how can someone who does not trust, what can they do to relax trust so that the hypnosis does work? This is Julie.
Yeah. I will say, based on what I do with acute quantum healing hypnosis, it's generally about 5 hours, and that throws a lot of people off. But a good portion of a session, when I first started, there were some that were 7 hours and 9 hours long, and
wow.
I mean, the time goes by very quickly, but a great deal of the time is spent just talking with the person, developing this trust. It's not even the hypnosis yet. It's, talking about your questions, why you're interested in hypnosis, any fears that you might have, learning more about if there's something about the hypnosis you want to know, talking about your life experiences. So it's really, really developing kind of a relationship with a practitioner before you even start the hypnosis. And I think that that's what makes what I do magical, because I know I couldn't walk into somebody's office I didn't know, and especially if I had never done hypnosis before, and I'm worried that I'm going to black out and not remember anything, and this person, what are they going to do while I'm asleep? I mean, all those are, I think, justified fears to have, but the QHHT is different from that, in that people will, you feel more relaxed with someone. You get to know them, especially when you're sitting with them for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours.
Right.
You get a pretty good sense of whether you trust them or not.
That makes sense. That leads right into what Jackie's saying. She had hypnosis with her stepmom, and it took a while to go under because she was thinking, what if she asked me something I don't want her to know?
Family, I think that's one of the reasons why it was so difficult with my mom. Not that she was hiding things. In her case, she was more worried about me being successful, which is the lesson she needed to learn of you need to let go and focus on yourself. Yeah, family, that's kind of iffy. I've worked with another family member, and it did get into kind of confusing, awkward territory because I was kind of pulled into the session, and then it was like I felt my ego was coming in like, you really shouldn't be asking this question. So, yeah, I wouldn't recommend family per se, unless if you have a really close relationship and you know everything about them and they have no secrets to hide. It's not that, practitioners, at least QHHT, they stick to the questions that people bring with them. So that's one of the most important things. So you can't, an ethical hypnotist should not be asking like, oh, really? Tell me more about that, when it's not something the person
part
really
of what, they need to be doing. Yeah, it's definitely awkward.
Yeah.
Imelda said you're so lucky to be able to experience all these lives coming out of just one person. So I can imagine.
It's really, it's so incredible to be able to experience history firsthand. Like,
right.
To connect someone, someone goes somewhere, you really don't know where they are or what they're doing. Sometimes it never really, asking factual questions, like what date is it, isn't a good thing to do, just because it gets you in that rational thinking part. But when things come to the surface, like if that lifetime I talked about with the blacksmith, he was just working in a shop, and then all of a sudden he's like standing outside of his house with a gold ring in his hand. It's also like playing a detective, because it's like, well, where'd this gold ring come from? Did you make it? And he's like, no, I think I stole it from the preacher. And so it's like a movie. It's just really incredible. And sometimes you come into a middle of the lifetime and there's all the stuff going on, and the person is like, I don't know where I am, I don't know what's happening right now. And then you kind of go back in life and work your way up to that point, and it's like a full circle, and it's so interesting. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. So Harley's got a good question. As readers and healers, do you find that there are people you can't get through? So I know for me, I'll just say real quick that it's a yes. It's there's some people that come in and they ask questions and you don't know them, or they're asking third party or something that you just can't push through. And some people I've noticed just have walls up when it comes to it, and it's just hard to be able to access their higher self in order to find out what you need to know. And so sometimes the cards are not clear, I think, because that other person is kind of shut off to it, even though they're asking the question. But what about you, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, my progression and understanding kind of, I don't know how I tap in and what I tap into and the energies I tap into. I tend to connect with higher selves, more so than anything else. So what's interesting is, I think because it started as a practitioner, I would ask people's questions to their higher selves, and the higher selves would answer. But there are a lot of questions, not tons, but some people will have questions that are really, I don't want to say superficial, but it's not what they need to be focusing on right now on their life. It's not important. And higher selves, when I was in sessions, and it's like a question that really has nothing to do with what a person needs to know, I've had them say, that's irrelevant, next question. Or
Yeah.
that's not important. That's exactly what she doesn't need to be worrying about, because she needs to focus on this. So it's very matter of fact. And so in readings, I experience that, and I'm still learning how how to tactfully do that with people when they're asking about, will I win the lottery tomorrow? And I'm getting like, she has everything she needs. She doesn't need to be worrying about the lottery. She needs to be worrying about a relationship with this. It's like, how do you, I feel like I and I do share the information, and I think, like I said, the higher selves, they never show you anything you're not supposed to see or ready to handle. And I think the information, now that I'm thinking about it, this is information that someone needs to hear and is ready to handle. It may not necessarily be why they, booked a session,
Right.
but people are, they're receptive, because it's like, okay, I guess I really, I don't need, $1 million right now, so I should be directing my focus in somewhere else. And I think it's, it's our higher self. So even so, I think that there's an aspect of yourself that it's like, yeah, I know I need to focus on this. So, yeah. So I guess that's, and there are people who are
Makes
very,
sense.
very guarded too, and
Right.
Have had really traumatic lives, or a very traumatic life now, and it's a challenge. I had a lady like ask me to leave my cell phone and like any type of recording devices outside of the room when we had the hypnosis, because she had connection and ties to the Russian mafia, and she was afraid she was going to say something that would give away secrets.
Oh my goodness.
I mean,
Wow.
so yeah, I'll say that she had a big challenge going into hypnosis just because of the fear factor, which was unfortunate. But
Would you think that are people who are more spiritual easier to hypnotize than others that aren't?
no, it always surprises, I don't know. There's a particular, I don't want to say breed of people, but there's a particular person that's just really curious and really has no fear or qualms about jumping into it without really knowing what it's all about. Even though I have like preparation suggestions for a session, um, they might not even need healing. It's just, I want to experience this. And I, like, I meet with them, and it's like within the 5 minutes, first 5 minutes, I feel like that we could just do the hypnosis right there, just because they have this certain energy about them. But then there's some people who I don't know, the spirituality, I guess the best way to put it is, I've met with some people that they are looking for the next best thing spiritually, and they don't really
Right.
focus on one particular thing. And so it's almost like, I don't want to say short attention span, but I met with a lady that she had like over 500 bottles of unopened vitamin and herbal supplements in her cabinets. And she had all these projects she had started that she never finished. And so it was almost like when she was spiritual and she had a lot of knowledge, but I think that there's this level of, do you really connect on a different level with what you're doing? So we can know something, but understanding it and connecting with it are two different things. So I think that might be part of it too.
Makes sense. Yeah. Let's see. Amanda said, I've always felt like, or feel I've asked readers adjacent questions because I haven't really focused on the nut of the matter. I'm not sure I understand that one. Sorry, Amanda. Harley says the spirit guides don't think it's a necessity or if there's something more important that you need at the time, that's the message they'll deliver or heal, right?
Yeah. Higher selves are not wishy-washy. I mean, there's different strains or not strains, but the higher selves I've learned will communicate with you. So yes, your higher you communicates with you in the way that they know you will listen, and they know that you're trying to thought. I mean, they know you better than you know yourself. So if you're asking over and over again for something that isn't essential or could take you really far off your path and purpose in this life, they're not going to do it, because it's like we can't. And one of the things is non-interference. Like, they can help, they can give us nudges, they can give us little intuitions, but they can't step in and completely change our life path for us. And that's a misconception that I think I used to have, is, you're in a particular life path, but then you want to win $1 million, but that might take you completely off of your life path and what you came here to learn, and they're not going to do that. And it's the same thing with information. I've had higher selves where someone asks a really profound question about, I'm trying to think of what an example would be, like, someone maybe was told by a psychic that her mother murdered her in a past life. And if I ask their higher self that, some people are equipped to handle that information, but then there's some people who it could really throw a kink into the relationship with their mother, knowing she had murdered them in a past life. So it's really not.
That could be traumatizing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've talked about on your show before, but Dolores Cannon's daughter Julia actually has kind of a story like that. Granted, she was equipped to be able to handle the information, but she went on a trip to San Francisco many years ago. She felt like she had been there before, but she hadn't. There's one particular building she really just felt connected to, and Dolores hypnotized her, and it ended up that she went to this lifetime in San Francisco in the 1920s or 30s. She was a news reporter. That building used to be, the news hub. And there was a serial killer during that time locally, I think, that was killing women in a park at night. And she decided to take on the story. She ended up getting killed. And it came to be in this lifetime. Her biological brother was actually her murderer in its past life.
Wow.
So she was obviously equipped to handle the information. They didn't tell the brother right away.
I bet, yeah.
In addition to that, the biological brother's wife in this lifetime was also another one of his victims. So part of his kind of karmic rebalancing was to be the brother and husband to two of his victims from past life. So yeah, there's information that would really throw us off. So
is my higher self akin to an angel? That's a good question.
I wouldn't say angel, because the higher self is you. It's that infinite part. It's that infinite part of yourself. I mean, a good way to think about it is, I don't know, the palm of your hand is your higher self, and then there's all these different lifetimes of your fingers. So it's kind of the central hub of all of our lives, all of our experiences. It has all the knowledge of everything that we have experienced and will experience-ish. So it's not, I mean, in a sense it could be, it's not really an angel though. It's your own energy. So when healings happen, for example, that's what's so incredible about QHHT, is that it's not some external source that's healing a person. The person is healing themselves. And that's something that a lot of people either don't realize or they forget about. But
Right.
Yeah.
Is your highest self the best possible version of you?
That's a tricky question.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the spirit world, best and worst don't really exist. Right and wrong, good and evil. Um, it's just it's the all-knowing, omnipresent presence aspect of yourself that is always there and that we all have access to, and is able to access other knowledge outside of just your life. Well, no, that's not true. There are some limits to what a higher self can access. So um, it's definitely, it's separate but part of everything that's outside of our experience. So I know that's kind of vague.
No, that makes sense to me. Is the higher self the same as the ego? I think that's a no.
Yeah,
Right? That's a definite no.
I don't want to say they're opposites, but the ego,
Because the ego thinks that it's
yeah,
kind of saving us or protecting us, and the higher self is doing what's for our own good
yeah.
as well. So, yeah.
The ego is kind of like the chihuahua. I love chihuahuas. That's not a bad thing. That chihuahua attitude that's like bark, 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 and it doesn't really see the bigger picture of
Right.
maybe
Right.
I shouldn't be barking at the big dog. That's kind of a good way to characterize the ego a little bit. It's like it's there to protect. It has good intentions, but it doesn't have the full awareness and knowledge of all of our lifetimes, of our life purpose, why we're here. So it has a very, very narrowed view. All it knows is it needs to protect, but it gets a lot of satisfaction when we can't decide or make a decision. It makes them happy.
So, it's your soul. Does that be the higher self? Would be your soul?
Yeah, I usually relate the soul to the higher self. It's kind of like that base essence of all that we are. Um, and then I kind of like in spirit to, our individual, you know, when an aspect of our soul or our self comes into a lifetime, um, kind of that's what I equate with spirit.
Moira wants to know, is your highest self the purest energy aspect of you?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah. It's always, the funny thing is, and I don't know how, it's to claim to know everything about all is difficult from a human perspective. But I will say that, there are definite differences between people's higher selves and how, their approach to giving information is the same, but some of them have really great personalities. They're hilarious. They make jokes. They make fun. Like my higher self loves to make fun of me, um, which makes sense in some dark part of myself. I don't know why. But there are some people, and I think it's when they're more authentically aligned with spirit and source, their higher selves tend to be very, very, I guess, distant would be the way to put it. That it's absolutely, a lot, it's no nonsense, but they, higher selves are, it's almost robotic. So if you ask questions that are just like, why, I don't know, very, very earth centric, single lifetime questions, they won't have anything to do with it. It's like that's not important.
Wow. This is good question from Karen. Who has more of a presence in our daily life, our higher self or spirit guides?
Our higher self is always with us, so it's kind of like it's really impossible for us to be separate from our higher self, in the bigger scheme of things. So I would say higher self is always with us, but then guides are there too, but they're,
Right. We talk about calling on our spirit guides.
Yeah, guides. I
Yes.
mean, guides are definite, energetic, different energies who do. Where they come from are different. Some of them have had lifetimes on Earth. Some of them have not. I've heard some psychic mediums say that someone in this lifetime that passed away can't become a spirit guide. I've actually had a couple of clients where they become spirit guides in training. Like their mother passed away and they decided they wanted to become a spirit guide. I really don't know how it works, but
Right.
um, yeah. But the spirit guides, we have the one major one that sticks with us from beginning to end. But other spirit guides come and go depending on what we need and what type of guidance and support we need at any particular time. So, um, and so they change. So it's, if you're a bartender in downtown San Francisco and having particular experience and friends and challenges, some guides will probably not be there and others will. And then you might go back home and some of your guides that you had when you're a child or other things might return and help you that way. So, I know that there's many, 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 many guides that any one person can have too. We can have shared guides also, which
Oh, that's pretty
um,
cool.
yeah. Um, I've had a couple of people, like they have a guide that actually is shared between a mother and a daughter or other things. So sometimes that happens too, which um, was a new revelation for me.
This Moonlight says, I often hear that humans cannot reincarnate into animals. What are your thoughts about that? I know you've had some experiences with some things like this a little
Yeah.
bit, right?
Well, the fun, the thing, the Dolores. So I don't want to conflict with Dolores, but I think that there was one time, or she's might have said it a couple times. I mean, I haven't seen all of she's ever produced, but there was a definite sense that like becoming a human or incarnating in the human on Earth plane was kind of like the last step, um, and that I I don't want to quote it, but I think I very much remember that she said you wouldn't go back into an animal. Um,
Hmm.
but I've had a couple clients that have had really 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 strong relationships with their pets, like that really deep bond. It's that one pet that you connect with. The others, you still love, but there's that one deep connection where you feel like it's a soul connection. I had a client, she had that with a dog. She had like 10 dogs. She lived on a ranch. There's this one dog that was always by her side, always knew how she was feeling, would come to her when she was sad or upset. And it was just this inescapable type of connection. Um, and one of her questions was, she was like, I have this feeling that I know her, my dog. I can't remember the name. I asked her higher self, and her higher self said, yeah, they've actually had many lifetimes together, and he was actually a human, way, way back. And in this lifetime, he decided to come in as kind of like her companion, almost kind of like a spirit guide, but in animal form. Um,
Wow.
so, yes, um, I've had the experience. So, that's my experience. I'm just talking from my experience. So, yes, according to what I've experienced. So,
And that's interesting, Miss Moonlight's question, because I wrote down a question for you. What about the higher selves of animals? What do we know of that? And I know you've done some work with animals. You work with them, right? A little bit. Oh, you're
yeah.
muted. Oh, there you go. Now you're back.
I'm trying to. I can't say that I know if animals specifically have higher selves. Like, I've never communicated directly with a higher self of an animal.
Do you
I've
think it's
communicated
possible
with
to?
spirits of animals. Well, I guess the thing is that I don't know. I don't know. That's actually a really good question. Because I don't know if the higher self is something that comes in when we start having human lifetimes, but that at the same time, we've all had lifetimes as animals and other objects and bees and rocks and trees. So I don't know. I don't know if, as I know, actually, I mean, to throw another kink into this, we have more than one higher self, just in different dimensions. And I'll
Oh
just leave
wow.
it at that. So that makes it even more
Good Lord.
complicated. So I don't know. That's a really good question. I'll put that on my list.
That's awesome. All right. And we've got one more here. A Joyful Journey is asking, will you be doing another group hypnotism session soon?
Yeah, I did one yesterday. I started doing them again, the past life one, and then Kevin Lewis and I are actually teaming up again. So we're doing, interestingly, a spirit animal regression slash kind of healing type work 2 weeks from Saturday the 27th. So that's the next one. It's on my website if you're interested. We're going to do inner child, and then Kevin wants to do some type of like remote healing type hypnosis session. So we haven't really worked through that yet. But yes, I'm going to be doing them a lot more frequently.
And what about on your show? Have you or your channel? Have you got anything in the works besides what you just were talking
Um,
about here with Kevin?
no, no, I've had things pop in where I might do, just like I feel like I need to explain kind of what I explained in terms of, how past life regression can benefit you from more of a kind of like a not a field trip perspective, but why what's the benefit of doing that type of work and how it can help you. Um, so I guess it will be more kind of theme led questions. I just haven't. It's taken me a while to figure out my niche, I think.
Definitely, that's great. I think what you do is wonderful, and I just wanted to. This one caught my attention too. Harley says, "Do you think that the higher self can be the energy form of your pineal gland, third eye, or a combination of both, or is it something in your soul that you can't, you know, can't necessarily see?" I just added that myself, but yeah.
Energy form of your opinion. I mean, I'm, I can't say if I know that there's a difference between the pineal gland and the third eye. I mean, well, that's not true. Like, I think the pineal gland is more the physical, and then the third eye is more the spiritual, energetic
Spiritual.
kind of product of our pineal gland. I don't think it is our higher self, but that's, I think, one, working on that and cultivating it, and trying to keep your pineal gland healthy in various ways, strengthens or allows you to strengthen the connection with your higher self, among many other things. But I don't think it's one and the same per se, because our higher self isn't in the physical per se. Um, so
Right.
yeah, yeah, it's it's still fuzzy in a lot of ways. I mean, there's some aspects of, I've asked questions, and when the time was right in sessions, which is very rare, but when I get that opportunity, it's, you know can a animal have a higher self or something like that. But if I ask questions that are kind of like beyond our comprehension, they'll just let me know. They're like, don't worry about it, you're not supposed to understand it, just keep going.
Right. Right.
So it's okay not to know is one of the biggest things I've learned. So we think we need to know everything, but there's just some things that we can't understand.
It's like a water fountain, how we're given the information. If we were given all the information that is really out there, it would be like a fire hose, you know, going into us. It would blow our head off. So we wouldn't be able to I don't think comprehend it, maybe. So
yeah, I mean, there are things that we aren't supposed to know, but then there's also things that there's sometimes it's really, particularly when other, I say higher beings, that's not a good or better. I always kind of throw that in there. It's just on a different plane. Sometimes they come through sessions and sometimes they're trying to explain things that a person needs to know or an answer to a question, and they can get frustrated and being like because essentially when they're coming through a session, they're using the vocabulary and the knowledge that that person actually holds within them. So if someone doesn't have the terminology for it, or if we just all of us period don't have terminology or understanding of something, they can't explain it, and it sometimes it gets frustrating for them because they're like, there isn't a word, like she doesn't have the word to be able to tell you what this is, and you don't have the awareness to be able to understand it. So that's it.
Awesome. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
All right. So Garnet had a question here. The higher self, is it outside of our aura?
I'm going to say yes, because I know that there is a chakra. I've heard it called like the stellar gateway chakra. I know it's like 24 feet above our head.
Right.
That, in a spiritual sense, is where we can gain direct access to our higher self. I don't, sometimes other modalities, they don't use the term higher self, but accessing universal knowledge and awareness and our higher purpose and our awareness of not why we came here and what we're supposed to do in this lifetime. That's kind of the chakra center for that. So I'm supposing that yes, our higher self is different from our aura and our energy fields, that it is different. But at the same time, I think it is, we would have to share energy with our higher self too. So I don't know how that figures in with the auras.
That's a good question. Yeah. Thank you, Garnet, for that. So here's Jason's website, and his channel is down below. So please subscribe and go to his website and see what all he has going on there, which I think is a lot. So of interesting things. So I appreciate you being here. And you're a wealth of knowledge.
This was great. I always think I'm not going to have anything to talk about.
You were great. Yeah. And we had so many great questions from the chatters too. So,
thank you for the questions.
Thanks for being so involved and with us.
Awesome. Now I have actually my own questions to ask if I can during sessions.
Right.
About this aura thing. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And thanks to the moderators and people watching and everything else.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I wanted to thank Wendy for her donation. Thank you so much, Wendy. And it's good to see you, and it's good to see everybody. And I will be back at 8 o'clock with Ramon from Moon Scarab. We're going to talk about our decks and just fun stuff. So come back for that if you will. And hopefully we'll see Jason again. I hope so. So thank you again. Yeah, thank you again for being here.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.